What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to Down to the Wire. I'm your host, Brian Costa, and today we have got a lot to cover, from the Celtics being a rumored suitor for Kevin Durant to the future of Xander Bogaerts in the Boston Red Sox. We are going to cover it all today. So thank you guys for tuning in. Strap on in because it is going to be a wild ride. But, with talking about all this stuff today, I'm going to have some help because it is a lot to cover. So without any further ado, he is a fellow content creator. He's really grown on TikTok. He's approaching 70,000 followers over there. He's a diehard Celtics fan, so he's going to really help me out with this first take. So, you've seen him on the show before. And without any further ado, please welcome back Mr. Ian Inangelo. Ian, welcome back to the show, man.
Thanks for having me back, Ryan. I'm hyped. We got a lot to talk about today. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, man, we do. Obviously, it's been a wild world in the NBA. I woke up to this news from people just texting me left and right, and I was like shocked as anyone. And in case you guys have missed it at this point, the Celtics are a rumored suitor at this point for Kevin Durant, Adrian Wojnarowski, Shams Charania. They were all going haywire on Twitter, given their latest intel on the situation. I believe Woj was the first to break the situation, and then Shams kind of gave us some inside info. There's a lot of things that could be going on there. One of the big parts of this story is that Jaylen Brown is the centerpiece of this trade that would be going back to Brooklyn. The rumored trade that Boston gave Brooklyn initially was it was Jaylen Brown, Derek White, and a first-round pick. Brooklyn declined that and countered by saying, if you throw in Marcus Smart, we'd consider it. So there's a lot of pieces that are moving right here now. Ian, you saw this news kind of when it first came out at 2:30. I was fast asleep. What were your thoughts when you first saw this come out?
My first thoughts, well, since it was 2:30 in the morning, was like, first of all, why is Woj awake at 2:30 in the morning? I don't know if he's based out of the West Coast, but even then, like, that's like 11 o'clock at night. Like go to bed at that point, Woj. Like, come on, man. Anyway, after that, it was just kind of a thought of, there's no way that Brad Stevens would actually do that, right? There's no way he would actually make a trade for Kevin Durant. And then the Shams report, because I went back to bed like after I saw that, and then I woke up again and I saw the Shams report, and I'm like, okay, are we actually doing this right now? Is this actually a thing? Because it was completely unexpected in my opinion, because I thought they were pretty much done this offseason. I thought everything was fine and we were just going to have a stress-free rest of the offseason, but apparently not. So
no, when can you ever sleep during the NBA offseason? It's always got to be just one thing crazier after another. And I mean, we've had a pretty exciting NBA offseason so far. I'd be likely to say that this would put it over the top as the craziest. I mean, it seems that each year it's just, usurping itself as the craziest offseason. But if we see Kevin Durant get traded, yeah, that's going to take the cake for me. I've seen a lot of people have mixed reviews of this. You are not a fan of this. I saw that you posted a TikTok about it. You were collecting your thoughts at 2:30 in the morning and, doing so again, earlier on, later on the day. So give us a breakdown of your thoughts on why you don't want to see Kevin Durant in a Boston Celtics uniform.
So my first initial thought, and this might just be a regular obvious thought, you were 2 wins away from the NBA Finals last year. Like, you were 2 wins away from winning it all with Jaylen Brown and with Jason Tatum as your core group of guys. You just added Malcolm Brogdon and Danilo Gallinari so they can complement Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Then why would you want to trade one of the guys you're trying to build around for Kevin Durant, who, don't get me wrong, it's Kevin Durant, it doesn't really matter who it is, but Kevin Durant already has an injury history. He's not getting any younger. And in reality, the Celtics just beat Kevin Durant. Why would he want to come to Boston? And why would Boston even really want him? That was kind of my biggest kind of takeaways from my initial thoughts at 2:30 in the morning when I first heard this news.
Yeah. I mean, I also was pretty shocked by this news. I mean, I figured that, like a bunch of other contending teams, the Celtics at least would entertain the possibility of a trade for KD at this time. So it wasn't shocking to me that they'd reach out and that a report would get going. But I think that more of this than anything is Sean Marks leaking this news in an attempt to really speed up the process and see if other teams will bite and really give him a counter to his deal.
Yeah, I didn't think about that until like later on, because I'm thinking about it. I'm like, who would actually tell Woj or Shams any of this information? Because if you think about it, and I think it was Dan Greenberg on Twitter, he's like, Brad Stevens has not leaked any of his deals. Brad Stevens has kept pretty quiet in any trade or any deals that he makes. So I don't really know why this one would be any different. So I think it would have had to be Sean Marks either trying to get somebody, maybe Toronto, to throw in Scotty Barnes if something like that was going to happen. Or maybe he just wanted to screw with the Celtics and maybe just start some controversy with Brown and Tatum. Who knows? But
that's always going to be something that's coming. Tatum and Brown controversy is nothing short of, we've seen it plenty of times now in the NBA with the Celtics at this point and all the controversies that have been started up. It seems like they just really don't want this duo to work out no matter what. They've just never really seemed to give it a chance. And I don't know about you. I've always, up until this finals run, I saw the duo of Tatum and Brown as almost a younger version of a Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan. And obviously different positions, but I saw them being, like these just two, good all-star level guys that, when it came to the reality of the postseason, we're not going to get it done against some of these bigger teams. That was my fear of them for a long time. And I thought that, all right, if we're going to get past a Milwaukee, if we're going to have to get past, let's say a Brooklyn when, they swept us out of the playoffs the year prior, we're going to have to go out there and make a deal. And I thought that similarly to when the Raptors traded, DeMar DeRozan, who was one of the pieces of that key duo to get Kawhi Leonard, I thought we were going to have to do something very similar with Jaylen Brown. I just thought I didn't think it was going to be Jason Tatum, so I figured it was going to be Jaylen Brown going out the door at some point. The difference is when I looked it up, when DeMar DeRozan got traded, he was 29 years old. So he was in the prime of his career, and you pretty much knew what he was going to be. Obviously, he had a great season last year, was an all-star still at the age of 33, so he's proven that he's a great player. But Jaylen Brown is 25 years old. He's not going to be 26 until October. So there's a vast, vast difference there as to what Jaylen Brown could still become. And to blow it up now, I understand that we all, in a sense, we all want this. I understand that people want this. They want the superstar. They want that. But what you can get in turn when you do that too early is this. You get bad if you go a little too early. That's what happens. And you blow it up. And listen, I think that if you give this maybe 2 more years and, the Celtics had a little bit more time, kind of going into their primes to make a run at the playoffs, you can make a case and say, you know what? We've given them a lot of time to work this thing out. It doesn't look like it's going to be the case as they head into their primes. We need to do something drastic to at least get a championship out of this core. I could understand that, but I think it's a little too soon.
Yeah, and that was my other thinking. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I was a pessimistic Celtics fan at one point during the 2020 season where everything was falling apart, and the beginning of last season, it just looked like, the future was bleak and there was nothing that was ever going to come out of it. And there was, I never thought they were actually going to trade Jaylen Brown, but I thought about life without Brown and what he could possibly come back with. And then, Tatum had his interview with JJ Redick on his podcast, basically saying, the grass isn't really greener, whether, you trade Brown, you trade Tatum, there's no guarantee the picks or players that you get back are going to equal the amount of talent that Brown or Tatum possesses. So after that, I kind of stepped back and I was like, yeah, there's no way. Both of these guys haven't even hit their primes yet. We just saw Jaylen Brown ascend from someone who's maybe a top 25 player to someone that could possibly be a top 15 player with his finals performance this year and basically his performance the entire playoffs. Jason Tatum is nowhere close to his prime, and he's still growing, and he just led his team to the NBA finals with Jaylen Brown. So, at that point, it was just like, what are you going to do? That's like, why would you even entertain the possibility of trading either one of them? And it feels like throughout their entire careers, Danny Ainge never gave them the chance. It was always Kyrie or Kemba Walker or anyone else would come in, but they wouldn't give the reins to Tatum and Brown. And Brad Stevens gave the reins to Tatum and Brown this season for the first time. It really felt like it was the first time it was their team, and they just went to the finals. So at this point, it's just, why would you even try to mess with anything that just led you to the NBA finals? And Brad Stevens, he's done what he's needed to do. He's gotten bench guys that they needed. And, it's mind-boggling to think why anyone would really want to get rid of Brown at any kind of stage of their career.
I mean, here's why I kind of will defend why we didn't, always give the keys to Tatum and Brown is because they're still ridiculously young. I mean, Brown is just turning 26. Tatum just turned what, like 24? So again, when Kyrie was here, Jason Tatum was 22 years old, like 21 even.
And that's
so
true.
I mean, so you can't give the reins to them at that point. But I do understand what you're saying with the amount of total control and where they can really go from there.
Yeah, and I mean, to go back to your point, it kind of feels like right now you're more in a Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum type thing. Yeah. Now the DeRozan one was good, but they were both kind of older and they were both more established players when they were with Toronto. Yeah. And it kind of feels like now Tatum and Brown have a chance. They made their huge run. Portland had their huge run when they made the Western Conference Finals with Dame and CJ. And they gave them another 3 or 4 years to see if they could ever get back there. Sadly, it didn't happen and they had to get rid of McCollum. But, this is just kind of the situation the Celtics are in right now, where you have to see how far you guys can get, because you basically made it there. You are 2 wins away from, winning it all and fulfilling the ultimate goal of any team in the NBA. So, if you can just add the pieces you need to add for your bench, I don't see why you can't go back to the finals and this time win it.
Yeah. And that's part of the reason why I'm apprehensive about the Durant move, because, when we had this finals run last year, Tatum was in a sense the leader of that core and was like the focal piece that helped us get to that level. Obviously he had injuries and stuff down the stretch, but still was the leader that helped us get there at an incredibly young age. You have to respect it. When Kevin Durant though comes in that room, he's going to be the man in charge. Tatum is going to have to take a step back. I don't know how that's going to work. Obviously, Tatum's young. He'll have to adapt. He's going to have to figure it out. But, Tatum's been in this role now for a good period of time. Is he going to be willing to take that step back and be second fiddle because he's been the first guy? Even when Kyrie was here, he was always considered Tatum, then Brown. It was always Tatum and then Brown. It was never Brown over Tatum at any point. So I don't know if Jason Tatum is willing to step back and be a number 2 guy.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about it, I guess we have seen Durant and Tatum at the same time. I mean, granted, it was the Olympics, and Team USA is a completely different atmosphere than the NBA.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's times where Kevin Durant is going to want to be Kevin Durant. He's going to want to take over. And normally, if you've seen in the past, Kevin Durant, when he's with another star, he is with a point guard, basically. Mm-hmm. You had Russell Westbrook in OKC, Steph Curry in Golden State, Klay Thompson, who's another guard. And now you got Kyrie. So, I'm not saying that both of them wouldn't work together, but it feels like it's really not the play style that Durant kind of favors. So I don't really see it ever, kind of materializing. And with Tatum, I think you still need to give Tatum another year, especially after his disappointing finals performance. You need to see what he does and see if he can bounce back from that, because if he bounces back from it and he just goes on a tear the entire season and into the playoffs and stuff like that, then, you don't have to worry about anything. But, the only cause for concern is if there isn't something there, if he kind of lets it get into his head too much. So granted, I don't think that'll happen, but we're going to have to see with that.
Yeah, I definitely agree that I want to at least see what another year of this team can look like. Are they going to be hungry after a finals loss like that and try to get back there? You got reinforcements in Brogdon and Gallinari, or is there going to be kind of a hangover effect where it takes a little bit of time for them to really get their bearings again and establish themselves as the best team in the East? That's something I wonder about. And another thing that I'm kind of wondering about now is, with all these rumors swirling, about Jaylen Brown possibly getting moved for Kevin Durant, Jaylen Brown getting traded for another superstar. Jaylen Brown's been, the centerpiece of a lot of potential deals for Boston to land a superstar. And Jaylen Brown took to Twitter. He, said SMH, shaking my head in response to the deal. But I also heard that he, responded and said, when it came to certain guys, like a Kawhi Leonard, like an AD, like their names were always thrown up in deals like that just because that's kind of the quality of player they are. I mean, he seems to understand that, just being a good star player in this league, if there's a chance for a team to upgrade players, your name's going to be thrown in a deal. So I think he understands it, but is still disappointed by it. But in your mind, is Jaylen Brown just going to be so disgruntled at this point that he's just probably going to want out of Boston now? Or how do you think that he's going to respond?
I don't know, because in the perfect world, he just takes this as, it happens. It's just going to happen. My name's going to be in trade rumors no matter what happens. And I'm just going to push past it and just focus on myself.
Because Marcus Smart was in trade rumors too at one point.
Exactly. Smart was in trade rumors. I mean, I remember when Tatum was a rookie, I remember there were so many rumors about him getting traded for Anthony Davis. And, he kind of pushed through it and he's now, who he is now. So I'm hoping that Jaylen Brown is okay with all of these rumors swirling. Now, my thing was when I think it was last month or a few weeks ago or whatever, but it was when he was liking tweets about saying Celtics fans were disrespecting him and no one really respects him like that, which...
Yeah, and it's compounding on each other.
And it is. And it's like, it's one of those things where if he really feels that strongly against, Celtics and Boston in general, you have to be a little concerned that he might leave. But I feel like you have to at least give it another year or two, because he still has I think he has like 1 or 2 more years before he's a free agent again. So I say next year is the year where you kind of are able to put together everything. And whether it means Brown has to get traded or Brown's going to leave, then I feel like we're not going to know that until we figure out what's going to happen next year.
Yeah, I'm just apprehensive. I just really don't know how he's going to respond to it. I think he'd be apprehensive to the idea of it at this point, because not even with the hate that he's gotten, not even with the trade rumors, but it's always that he's been second fiddle. And I mentioned it in terms of, the way Tatum's played and, the way, it would regard, the leadership of that team. Brown has been told this his entire time. Oh, it's Tatum, then you, Tatum, then you. But he's the one who went out in the finals and balled while Jason Tatum, shriveled up and completely disappeared during that series. So, I mean, he's probably just like, I actually showed up in those finals. Jason didn't. What's it going to take for me to get some damn respect? And I just don't know what it's going to look like for him. I think that, best case scenario, he's going to take it and use it for an incredible revenge season. He'll finally get the all-star nod that he deserves and, prove to be an even better piece of this team next year. But I feel like at a certain point, a guy can only take so much before they're like, all right, this is ridiculous. And you kind of just have to call bull.
No, 100%. He is 100% in the right to call bull whenever he wants to, because, like you just said, he balled out in the finals. Granted, there were times where he looked kind of bad, but everyone looked kind of bad in the finals.
A lot of the Celtics players looked bad, especially Jason Tatum.
Tatum, which is the person that you don't want to look bad out of everybody. So the fact that Jaylen Brown looked considerably better is something that you need to take into consideration. Now,
he had what, 34 points in that game 6?
Exactly. Like he was there. He was fighting. And I'm not saying Tatum wasn't, but it just felt like Tatum was never able to get it going no matter what he tried. And that just happens sometimes. But if I'm Jaylen Brown, I'm, maybe this is the year where it's Brown and Tatum at the same time, because I feel like in the finals, he established himself as where it's no longer Tatum's the one and Brown's the second option. It is now more of a 1A and 1B type situation. And I think it's probably going to be more on Tatum to see if he can adapt to that kind of system, because we'll have Brogdon kind of facilitating, so you don't have to worry about that. But Tatum and Brown have improved as passers. Granted, Brown still needs to work on his turnover issues, and maybe he can become a better passer. But at the same time, it's one of those things where, maybe it's time Brown is taken more seriously in, on the team, really, because it's not like he's not, but he has a chance to average just as many points as Tatum can. So
absolutely.
It's kind of one of those things where if Brown wants to continue maybe being the second option, but I don't think he's going to be, if he wants to continue doing that, great. And he doesn't have to worry about leaving, or maybe he just doesn't want to leave Boston in general. But if he does think that he can do better elsewhere and be the guy anywhere else, then, he has the right to think that because of the way that he's improved himself.
Yeah. And I think that if that of those two players to take a big jump like that and do that, it would be Jaylen Brown. It really it kind of lines up with the track record of his career. Jason Tatum started off at a great point and has just kind of gone on a gradual increase into becoming the player that he is now. It's been, he started off in a great place and then just slowly made his way into what he is now. Jaylen Brown is an interesting case because, if you just look at, him from a points perspective, he averaged, I think, 6 points in year one, like 13 points in year two, 20 in year three, and then what is averaging close to like 24 to 26 points in year four. And it was like, wow, this came out of nowhere. So, he's able to take those really big jumps, whereas Tatum is kind of on a slower rise, which, has worked well for both guys. So I think it is possible that you could see Jaylen Brown take that type of a jump. It's just going to be a matter of whether Ime Udoka allows for that in the system. I do want to see how this duo and the team in general just works now. After this finals, it looks like, after January, they were able to find themselves and, had that incredible run. What's that going to look like in a regular season? I want to figure that out.
Yeah, I agree with that. And honestly and truthfully, the Celtics regular season, I'm not talking about playoffs right now, but regular season has a chance to be what the Phoenix Suns did last season, where they just blew through everybody. And it didn't matter who you were, it didn't matter who you had, you were going to get beaten no matter what. And the Celtics have the potential to do that. That's just if they can find their consistency. And that's going to be the biggest thing with them, not only in the regular season, but in the playoffs, because it feels like right now, it doesn't matter about the regular season for the Celtics. You just have to get to the playoffs and you have to show up, because that's kind of the expectation right now. You were in the finals. Why can't you go to the finals again? You are now officially finals contenders, and you're going to be for the next few years or for however long Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum wants to stay. So this is basically your new challenge is you have to get to the finals any means necessary, and then you have to win when you get there. So it's going to be one of those things where I feel like they just need to find the right thing. And if the right thing works, maybe that's Jaylen Brown gets more involved. Maybe it's Tatum takes less shots or takes a step back. But if we're thinking about that, then how's Tatum going to feel when, he's not getting all the shots he used to get? Now, I feel like Tatum will be okay to adapt with that, because it just feels like he would be willing to adapt to something along the lines of that to win. But it's just going to be one of those wait and see approaches, because you have no idea what you're actually going to get from this Celtics team, because you had no idea what you were going to get from them last season. And this season, even though they had the expectations of making it back to the finals, you still really don't know, because it's still the same team as last year, basically. And I'm excited to see what Brogdon can do, because I've wanted Brogdon on the Celtics forever. So, if he can come in and he can be the facilitator that the Celtics need, what's really going to stop them?
Yeah, I think that they have a lot of great promise. So it's going to be exciting to see if they can stick together and make another run down the stretch. If, hopefully this core does stay together. With that being said, though, Ian, I want to jump over into MLB news with you to cover some events going over there. Had a great talk with you about Celtics news, but there are two pressing trade issues actually going on over in the MLB right now, and they involve, first of all, the First one involves national star outfielder Juan Soto. He's just a young phenom at this point. He's like, 24, I think, years old, like 23, 24, is incredibly young. The Nationals offered him a 15-year, $440 million contract. He turns it down. He would have become the highest paid player in all of baseball, but he said, no, I do not want that. I think I'm worth more than that, which is insane because, again, you would be the highest paid player in baseball, but he says no. And as soon as that started, the Nationals got incredibly petty. And, you can make the case rightfully so, but they got petty. They were not chartered the man a flight to LA. They said, all right, you have to get on your own plane and fly out there. He does that and proceeds to win the home run derby. So, I mean, he got a little bit of a laugh there. Was at Dodger Stadium, was getting chants from the crowd saying future Dodger, a lot of things like that going on. So there's a lot of talks going on with Juan Soto and what his future is going to be. I saw another thing as well from him was that Derek Jeter's documentary right now, The Captain, is airing on ESPN Plus, and there's a quote that Derek says in the documentary that's making a lot of headlines right now, and it's that loyalty one way is stupidity. Juan Soto retweeted that, put a period, and then deleted the tweet soon after. So a lot of people were like, okay, we get the message. So I'm just wondering, what is this? What do you think the situation with Juan Soto is going to look like? Because he isn't a free agent until the end of the 2024 season. How likely do you think the Nationals are going to be to actually move on from this guy?
I mean, we were just talking about Kevin Durant in the NBA. This is kind of the seismic, shift of that when it comes to the MLB. Now, I don't know how many cross, sports fans that you have where they follow both the NBA and the MLB, but I know most of my audience is mostly the NBA. But
I got a couple.
Yeah. So if you were following the NBA and you wanted to follow the MLB, think of what the Kevin Durant trade is right now, and that's what it is with the Juan Soto thing.
Yeah.
But Juan Soto is 23?
Yeah.
And I mean, he's literally on the track to be like the next Ted Williams or Babe Ruth at this point. So, granted,
he's 23 years old. So, ridiculous.
Exactly. And, the Nationals have every right to be mad about that. I mean, if you offer $440 million to someone, they didn't even offer Bryce Harper that. And Bryce Harper was their entire franchise for almost a decade, and they didn't even offer him that. So if you're going to turn that down, I think the Nationals have every right to be mad at him. But if you're Juan Soto, you must definitely not want to be in Washington if, you're going to turn that down. And granted, does he really need to be in Washington? He already won a ring. Why wouldn't he want to go to another contending team? So
I mean, at this point, it doesn't look like Washington's going to be anywhere near, the championship caliber team they were in 2019. When they won in 2019, they were incredibly old, and it looked like a near certainty that they weren't going to repeat or at least make a bid anywhere after that. Obviously, COVID kind of threw a wrench into that entire season, but they didn't make the playoffs regardless of that. And a lot of those big pieces ended up leaving. Max Scherzer was traded the following season to the Dodgers and now is with the Mets. So a lot of big guys off that team are no longer there anymore. So, I mean, I can understand where he's like, I did what I was supposed to do in this team. Obviously, I did it at an incredibly young age. So a lot of people would think that I should be, linked to this team for a longer period of time. But at the same time, why should I be?
Exactly. Like, if he wants to go somewhere and win a championship somewhere else, what makes him, what makes him wrong to want to think that? If you're a superstar, and we see this in the NBA all the time, if you're a superstar, why do you want to be on a tanking team? Or why do you want to be on a team that doesn't have immense talent that any other team in the MLB or NBA has? So if you're Juan Soto, I think you should ask for a trade. Honestly, I think the Nationals should trade him, and I feel like it shouldn't have been this big a deal anyway, because if you think about it, like we said before, he's only 23. Imagine trading like Luka Doncic right now in the NBA. That's the kind of haul that the Nationals are going to get from the Juan Soto trade. And really, there are a bunch of teams that could say, hey, this guy is still under team control for the next 2 years or so. We could extend him if we wanted to. And who knows? Maybe if he tests free agency, we'll still have one of the best players in the MLB on our team for the next few years, and that could make us instant championship contenders. Especially if you're a team like Seattle or San Diego or the Mets. You want to win a World Series, and Juan Soto could help you get there.
Yeah, I mean, what's incredible about him is that there are players of his caliber that are 28, 29, 30 years old, and if you had a chance to get them, it's like this is a life-changing talent. You get that, and you get the ability to determine how he's going to come up for the next 10 to 15 years of his career. I mean, this guy is so, it blows my mind that he's this ridiculously young based, again, and it's because he's demanding all these things in these trades, and you're just like, how do you earn that right? But this man debuted when he was 19 years old. I think, was he 18 or 19? I have to look.
I think it was 19. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was 19 years old when he makes his debut in the big leagues. And ever since then, he's been one of the most dynamic hitters in all of baseball, which is ridiculous. So, I mean, I don't know exactly what his situation is going to look like. I've heard a couple of rumors, like the San Diego Padres being interested. I see that as a possibility, mostly because their general manager, AJ Preller, has been known for making wild moves and then having to blow things up right afterwards. And I think that the Padres are maybe getting sick of that with their money situation. So Preller might just try to make, kind of a big swing at it and try to get this guy, get him on the team. And if it blows up in his face and they miss the playoffs, he was trying everything he could to win. So I think that's a possibility. And then I think the Mets are likely destination as well.
Yeah, honestly, I love him on the Mets, even though I don't know if the Nationals will feel some type of way trading him to a division rival, but I mean, he kind of fits perfect with the Mets and their timeline right now. So
but are the Nationals going to want to trade within the NL East? That's the only hiccup I have.
That's the thing. And I mean, if you wanted to trade to the American League, even though we're both Red Sox fans, we know for a fact the Yankees can easily make a package centered around any one of their prospects for Juan Soto, which is just terrifying to think about, especially if they lose Aaron Judge. Or what if they keep Aaron Judge? Then you'll have Aaron Judge and Juan Soto on the same team for
and don't forget Giancarlo Stanton.
And it's just going to be terrible for Red Sox fans. But anyway, even if you wanted to trade him to the Yankees, but honestly, I like Seattle, and I've seen a lot of people talking about Seattle. Seattle's a young team. They basically are. They have Julio Rodriguez. They are a superstar away from, being a legit contender, in my opinion. So I feel like Juan Soto would do great on the Mariners. And if you're the Mariners, why would you want a prospect haul at this point?
Yeah.
If you're trying to contend, do everything in your power to contend because you haven't made the playoffs since 2001.
Yeah.
Literally, I was born the last time the Mariners made the playoffs. I'm 21 now.
Look at us. We are just definitions of how long it's been since the Mariners have made the playoffs. It's ridiculous that it's taken this long.
And that was the last time they were actually contenders for a playoff spot. They've been close before, but they were never legit contenders, really. Juan Soto makes them legit contenders for a World Series ring. So
yeah, and that's the thing too. So, I mean, I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I saw this comparison too, and it's a question that I have for you because MLB Network was talking about this because Shohei Ohtani, is one of the best, pitchers / hitters in all of baseball. Just being a two-way player like himself makes him, a one-of-a-kind talent. Unlike Juan Soto, where if you were to acquire him right now, if you were to acquire Juan Soto right now, you'd get 2.5 years of eligibility. If you were to acquire Shohei Ohtani, you would get 1.5 years of eligibility. Which would you rather have if you're an MLB team? Would you have that? Would you have an extra year of control for the superstar Juan Soto, where you're going to get that incredible bat? Or are you going to take maybe a little bit less of that bat, but then also have the ability to be a dynamic pitcher on your team? What would you rather have?
That's tough. That's actually tough to think about because, I mean, Shohei Ohtani is just something we've never seen before. I feel like people still underrate the fact, like, Shohei Ohtani hits for insane power, and he actually pitches. Like, he's a legit pitcher at the same time. It's not anything crazy to think about. Like, it still feels kind of crazy that Shohei Ohtani does this. And I mean, if you could have the best of both worlds, I feel like you would want Ohtani more just because he can do what he can do. But at the same time, I think the threat of free agency is going to loom no matter who you trade for. But I think if I had to choose, I might take Ohtani over Soto just for the fact that, not only will we have, one of the greatest players in the MLB right now. I mean, the fact that he can do both, like, well, I was just going to say a team like the Angels, but I forgot the Angels actually, have him. But if you're any team that needs pitching and hitting at the same time, why wouldn't you want to get Shohei Ohtani? Now, Juan Soto is amazing in his own right, but if you have the chance to get Shohei Ohtani, I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't try to go after that.
Yeah, I mean, Shohei Ohtani is a legit unicorn. We've never seen it before, in the modern age. Obviously, way back when you had Babe Ruth, who was pitching to guys and throwing no hitters and then was proceeding to hit 700 home runs. But, in the modern era of baseball, we've never seen what Shohei Ohtani's been able to do. Obviously right now he's hitting, 256. The average wise is doing too good, but, has 20 home runs, is pretty solid as a pitcher. So it's a very interesting situation with him. I would maybe look more towards Juan Soto if you're, more stable on the pitching side, just because of what he really brings to the table and just that youth factor right there. Juan Soto, you're going to get a more consistent hitter too, where, Ohtani can go through stretches where he is dominant, but at the same time, he's been known to have injury problems here and there. Whereas Juan Soto has been pretty consistent up to this point in his career. So I'd probably go Juan Soto in that area, but I understand where you're saying Ohtani there.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, you if you had a chance to get either one of these guys, I feel like you should go for it. But it's crazy that it kind of feels like the MLB is kind of turning into the NBA right now with their young stars. Because the NBA players move like every other season at this point, and you're not normally used to seeing that in the MLB. So I mean, honestly, I find it more entertaining with player movement. I know a lot of people have a problem with it, but I like player movement. I like seeing new players on new teams all the time. But, it's just kind of crazy to think about. And I feel like it'll make the MLB a little more interesting at the same time, because you're going to have a guy like Shohei Ohtani who, he's with the Angels, but the Angels aren't a top tier team. You want to see him on a team like the Yankees. You want to see him on a team like the Mets or the Dodgers. You want to see him on a really good team contending. You don't want to see him on the Angels, who frankly just kind of wasted Mike Trout's career in front of his eyes. And now we're doing the same thing with Ohtani. So, it's one of those things where, loyalty is a great thing, but if you have a chance to be in a bigger market and win a championship, I feel like that should be your top priority.
I mean, I think Derek Jeter, kind of rounding off the segment best, Derek Jeter said it best: loyalty one way is stupidity.
Exactly.
So I just don't think if you're not going to show them that kind of same level of respect and, just keep them in that bad situation, I think that, those guys are going to want to get out of there. So, Juan Soto could possibly be going to the Yankees. I saw a rumor that Shohei Ohtani could possibly be going to the Blue Jays. So, any way you slice it, it's a bad time to be a Red Sox fan right now. We're as of right now, coming into today, we are 3 games out of the wild card. We're 4th place in the AL East. I was saying going into the All-Star break, we're gonna have to come out, really just hot and just try to really make a run down the stretch. It doesn't look like that's going to be the case right now. I had a take that I said on my friend's podcast. It's the Pesky Poll podcast with Robert Shelley, in case you guys were wondering. So go check that out. But we were talking on there, and I said, the Red Sox are getting healthy at the right time. Nathan Eovaldi's coming back. Chris Sale's coming back, which turned out to, be a terrible omen for us, as his hand shattered at Yankee Stadium and completely ruined that idea. But my idea was that we're all getting healthy at the right time. Kike Hernandez and all those guys are all going to come back. And similar to like a team like the Braves or like the 2019 Nationals, we could make a second half surge and really make a push into the playoffs and be, up there in terms of being one of the better teams of the second half and have that dictate our postseason. That was the best case scenario I saw for the Sox moving forward. That really has not looked like the case. We get blown out by the Blue Jays 28-5, which sounds like a football score. So we get killed by them. And then we've just seemed completely lifeless since the break. I don't know what it's going to look like for us at this point, but the trade deadline is August 2nd. At this point, I don't see where we're going to be buying at any point to make a run. So do you think that, Ian, do you think we're going to buy? Do you think we're going to full on go into sell mode?
I hate to say it because I don't want it to happen, and it kind of feels like the inevitable. However, if you're Xander Bogaerts and you were part of that 28-5 loss, like you were there, you have a player option to leave. If you don't want to re-sign with the Red Sox, I feel like now would be the best time to get traded because he's having another all-star season. He's still Xander Bogaerts. He's still an elite shortstop. And I mean, teams need a guy like Bogaerts. So I could realistically seeing the Red Sox trading Xander Bogaerts at the deadline, which sucks to say because I love Bogaerts, but this team is it's not very inspiring, at least as of right now, to instill any confidence in, either the fan base or the front office at this point that they can make a run to the playoffs. And it sucks to say because this team was 2 wins away from the World Series last year.
And frankly, a World Series, I think that if we get there, I think we have a shot to win that World Series.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, Atlanta was an amazing story, but with the team that the Red Sox had last year, it kind of felt like it would have been the Astros or the Red Sox winning it. But, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
And it kind of sucks to say, but I do think that Xander Bogaerts even might request a trade and he might want to get traded, which sucks to say. But if you're the Red Sox and you don't think you're going to contend, why would you want to keep these guys around when they could possibly go contend somewhere? So, and who knows, maybe you can get great pieces back for Bogaerts and you can re-sign him again. Today's like the 6-year anniversary of the Chapman deal to the Cubs, and the Chapman ended up signing back with the Yankees. So we'll just have to see what happens. But I do think it is kind of coming to that point where the Red Sox might have to make the tough decision to blow the team up, which I don't want to say, but it's kind of feeling inevitable.
Yeah. And I listen, I understand the whole sentiment with the Chapman thing. That was a lightning in a bottle thing that happened there.
No,
let's face it. When you trade the star player away and you get talent in return, and you trade him to a contending team, he's not coming back to that team. We had similar thoughts as to maybe John Lester will come back if we trade when we trade him to the Oakland A's. We could really get in the hunt for him. And he was like, no, I'm going to the Chicago Cubs because I think I can go win a World Series there, and he evidently did. Then you look at what was another situation? Oh yeah, Mookie Betts. We're going to trade him to the LA Dodgers, and he's going to be coming up on free agency in a year, and we can get Alex Verdugo, Brewster Gratterall, or Jeter Downs, or whatever it became, and then we can get Mookie Betts back. And Mookie Betts was like, no, I'm signing a 13-year deal out with the Dodgers, and I'm now going to go into the Hall of Fame wearing Dodger blue. So, that was the case there. With Xander Bogaerts, it feels very similar to that 2019 season with Mookie Betts now at this point, to where, you had a great story the year before. Obviously, 2018 was different than 2021, obviously, because we had the best season in Red Sox history and proceeded to win the World Series. Last year was a little bit different. We, kind of surged at the end and had a great postseason run. We're 2 wins away from the World Series. So, we were very, very close. But it feels very similar into the way that it's going to be spun into it being, essentially the higher ups are going to say, well, if we can't win with Xander Bogaerts right now, why are we going to keep him on the team? Why shouldn't we trade him and get more value for him? And I point to that 28-5 loss and I say, because he looks like he was the only one out there that was trying. I mean, he was making diving plays into the outfield, was making plays behind his back, trying to do anything he could to stay in a game like that. And I was like, the fact that he's even awake in a game like that, unlike Jaylen Brown, speaks volumes. So, I mean, I don't want I would hate to see Xander Bogaerts get sent out the door, but at this point, I think that it's almost what the Red Sox would like to do at this point. They lowballed the man all year. They didn't really show that initiative to get him signed. They brought in Trevor Story, which I didn't mind as a move for a second baseman because we've been lacking one for a while. And I thought, bringing an all-star caliber shortstop, have him play second base, and then you got Xander Bogaerts at short. That's a great infield duo. It's now just becoming apparent that was the replacement plan for Xander Bogaerts and kind of just at a cheaper cost. So it's Chaim Bloom doing what Chaim Bloom does. He's playing Moneyball with with one of the richest ball clubs in the big leagues, which is really annoying.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of annoying. Maybe it's just because we were used to what Dave Dombrowski did, and Dave Dombrowski was just the complete and utter opposite of what Chaim Bloom does. So
yeah,
we're kind of at both sides of the extreme here. And granted, we can't say that they aren't spending money, because they did spend money on Trevor Story, but it was the deals that didn't make sense. Like, you have to love Jackie Bradley Jr. There was no reason as to why you traded Hunter Renfroe for him. I don't really care who the prospects are that are going to come up and maybe be good. Hunter Renfroe was established. Granted, he had some mishaps in the playoffs, but it's one of those things where you should have just kept Hunter Renfroe around, and you could have re-signed Kyle Schwarber to that deal. The Phillies gave him a pretty solid deal. The Red Sox probably could have matched that if they were really serious about contending. And honestly, Kyle Schwarber, who knows? Maybe he's the answer at first base that they need. No disrespect to Bobby Dahlbeck or Franchi Cordero, but they're really not the answer as of right now. So it's kind of one of those things with all the decisions that they didn't make is kind of the issue that they're facing right now. Because if you had Kyle Schwarber on this team, I feel like they'd be a whole lot better. If you had Hunter Renfroe on this team, you'd be a whole lot better, even with the injuries. So,
yeah. And I mean, listen, while I don't think that Kyle Schwarber would be the answer at first base, what it would have provided you is the chance to maybe have Jd Martinez for this year. You let him go at the end of this year, because I think this is the final year of his contract, and then you could pretty much go on and say, all right, Kyle Schwarber is going to become the full-time DH. Tristan Casas, who is one of our top prospects, can come up and take that first base position, and then you could go from there. And then with Hunter Renfroe, my idea was, all right, if we're going to trade him away, then I originally thought, all right, Kike Hernandez is going to move back into the infield and he'll be our second baseman. And that was my thought up until Trevor Story came to town. And I was like, all right, now what's going to happen? Because now Jackie Bradley Jr. is going to be in the outfield. That's a whole situation now. And what doesn't make any sense to me at all is, you have Jaylen Brown in center field. We now see that viral clip of the ball just sailing over his head, getting lost in the lights. And listen, I've lost balls in the lights before. Twilight is awful. Like, it sucks. You cannot see the ball.
It's terrible.
But Jackie Bradley Jr. is a Gold Glove center fielder. Why is he playing right field? I don't get that. And and that's something that falls on Alex Cora too, because I think that if the Red Sox fail to make the playoffs this year, I think that Alex Cora is on the hot seat. I mean, I think that's just going to be the case because, Chaim Bloom brought Alex Cora back, and you can say that, oh yeah, he was his guy when, he took over the operation. But, when Chaim Bloom started this whole thing, I think that there were a lot of people were saying that he wanted to bring in a more analytical guy, someone like less of Alex Cora's type. And, I think that the fans were just really gung ho on bringing Alex Cora back, and he was like, fine. But I think he, at the first sign of trouble, he wouldn't wait to drop him.
Yeah, I could see it. I mean, granted, what loyalties does Chaim Bloom have to Alex Cora?
Exactly. No. Alex Cora is a product of Dave Dombrowski.
Exactly. And that's why they worked so well, because Alex Cora was the kind of manager that Dave Dombrowski was able to, work around. And, it's not that Alex Cora isn't a bad manager, because he is a super great manager. Yeah. It's some of his decision-making, not only with the Durant and Bradley situation. Now, I personally have a soft spot for Durant, seeing him in Worcester all the time.
I saw him in Worcester too. He's a great player.
Exactly. And it's, he hasn't put it together yet, but he's still young. He has a chance to improve, but he is not known as a great fielder. He really should not be playing center field. Granted, you could put him in right field or left field at that point, because it kind of feels like he's not really a center fielder right now. Even though he has blazing speed, he feels more like a corner outfielder than a center fielder defensively. So you should be putting Bradley in center. But my biggest problem with Cora's managing at times is the way he manages the bullpen, because there are times where we have guys like Ryan Brazier who can sometimes look like a great reliever, but when they're not, that great reliever, that's when it feels like Alex Cora puts them in 24/7. And it just doesn't make any sense, really. And the bullpen has always been an issue with the Red Sox. It feels like even when they were winning the World Series, the bullpen was never amazing, but you just had some guys that were okay. And it's just one of those things where, just some decisions, they could cost him his job, which sucks to say because I like Cora, but.
And at the same time, I like Cora too, but our play recently, and not just in the 28-5 game, but I think even in the game right after, we looked incredibly sloppy. I mean, take out the Durant play. We had a play that dropped right in the middle of the infield between.
Oh my God, I remember
between three defenders. And then you speak of Ryan Brazier. He goes to pick off a guy at second base and chucks the ball into center field and throws a run and basically throws 90 feet away, which I do think turned into a run right after.
Everything turned into a run in that game.
Yeah. No, well, I'm talking about the game after the words, like.
And then the Sawamura play yesterday where it was the ground ball back to him and he overran the base, and that was kind of embarrassing. So yeah,
and then like what was it, Lourdes Gurriel getting around the tag of Bobby Dahlbeck. So it's just and at the end of the day, you do have to credit teams for just outsmarting you and doing certain things. That play by Lourdes, great play by him. But at the end of the day, like at the end of the day, like you do have to say that some of those mistakes are on you. And I just don't know how much more the Red Sox are going to take before they do say, all right, we need to start over at manager. So I think that could be coming as well. So there are a lot of things on the table, and I just don't know what it's going to look like. But in your mind, is Jd Martinez gone?
I think so.
Yeah,
I love JD. So. He's not the same that he was before. Granted, that's just what happens with age, but he might have been. Someone told me the other day when I was at work, he said Jd Martinez might be the worst 300 hitter he's ever seen. Because it feels that way sometimes, where if he's not getting hits, he's striking out every single time, which kind of a little bit true.
Yeah.
And so I could really see Jd Martinez leaving, and the fact that the National
I didn't even mean Jd Martinez leaving. I think that he's gone at the deadline, to be honest with you.
Oh, gone at the deadline. Oh, yeah. I could see it. I could see that too. Basically, just because the National League has the DH now, so there's a bunch of different options where he can go. Also, I know we were just talking about Jackie Bradley. I had the game up right now. He just hit a double off the wall, and it kind of feels like Bradley's been the best player on the team so far.
You know what?
In the last week or so.
Every year, Jackie Bradley Jr. has a month where he's just the best player on the planet and then completely falls off the face of the earth again. So, if Jackie Bradley Jr. is the spark that lights this Red Sox second half, God be it. Like, I really hope if that's the case, then that's sad, but you know what? I'll take it.
Let it be somebody.
Exactly. If Jackie Bradley Jr.'s hot month can do it, then by God, let it be the case. But my God, that's a lot to cover.
It is a lot to, claim put your stake down on. But yeah, I think JD most likely gets traded at the deadline, because if you're JD, why do you want to be on a team like the Red Sox who aren't really going to contend? So
yeah. And I think JD even said that, if I'm getting traded to a team, I'm going to be on a contender. If I don't, I'm on a contender. So I'm going to be happy either way. So he's open to the idea of getting traded. It's not like he's, came out and said, Boston's my home, I want to be here forever. I mean, he might feel that way, but, he's at least to the media making it known that, I'm willing to get traded. So that speaks volumes.
Oh God. All right. I'm sorry. I know I probably shouldn't be talking about the game that's going on right now, but Yolmer Sanchez just hit a ball off the wall. It got thrown back into the infield. He was about a dead duck and he was just in a rundown, but you know what? They scored the run, so I guess that doesn't matter. But I mean, just kind of, that's just how we were just talking about all the things that were kind of embarrassing.
It kind of just sums it up, unfortunately. But and I think that sums up this topic of the Red Sox pretty well. Before we do go, I did want to highlight this as well. And, as we're to stay with the Red Sox, I wanted to talk about the great Red Sox, David Ortiz, getting inducted into Cooperstown yesterday. I believe the first designated hitter to do so on the first ballot. I believe
Edgar Martinez was.
I don't know. Edgar Martinez is in, but I don't know if he was first ballot. So I heard something, but I'm not entirely sure. But Ortiz is in, so it's great news for us. But a lot of people are wondering now. I saw this trending on ESPN, and people are wondering, with David Ortiz testing positive for steroids in 2003, does that officially open the door for guys like a Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens to get in? In my mind, it doesn't. And it's that when David Ortiz tested positive for those steroids, there was something specific about that test that I remember, and it basically was that it was a substance that they were going to ban or hadn't officially told the players they had banned. And once they had banned it, they said like no penalty would come if you tested positive for this. Ortiz tested positive and then never tested positive for anything again in his career. So I wouldn't necessarily hold that against him, but what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, in my opinion, I personally think Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame, regardless of the steroid use. Roger Clemens might be a different story, but he could still be in the Hall of Fame too. He was an amazing player. I really don't think steroid use should be a detriment to a player's career. Granted, you could say, oh, it's an asterisk because they were cheating, but you still had to play the games. You still had to be as dominant. And who else was as dominant as Barry Bonds in his time? Nobody. There was nobody in the MLB who was ever as dominant as Barry Bonds was when he was playing. So personally, I think Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if David Ortiz being there gives him or Clemens kind of, gives them the okay to be there, because there are other steroid users in the Hall of Fame. I think Pudge Rodriguez was there. And then it was one other person I can't remember off the top of my head. But
Bagwell and Piazza.
Exactly. There are people who have tested positive who are in the Hall of Fame.
And it's not even tested positive, but we're just a part of that era.
Exactly. So it kind of feels like, why should the best player of that era or the best players of that era be, granted, they did take steroids, but I feel like it doesn't matter because they were just as dominant as they were, especially for Barry Bonds. I think Barry Bonds is 100% a Hall of Famer, no matter, what you say. You can have a case against Clemens. Bonds knew he cheated. He said he was cheating, and no one could stop him, no matter how good or whether he was cheating or not, because before he cheated with the Pirates, he was still an amazing player. So
yeah, he was a 3-time MVP.
Exactly. So he was going to be in the Hall of Fame regardless. And I think Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame anyway. So that's kind of my thing with that.
I've always jumped back and forth on it, and part of me has always said, it was a part of baseball history. So a Hall of Fame, and it's a museum. It is a museum in Cooperstown, and museum should honor history, including the bad parts of it. So I understand that. At the same time, I do understand that, they were proven to be cheaters. There's all this, there's all that. And, and a lot of people think that they tainted the game and, ruined the sanctity of it. At the same time, that era is what brought baseball back.
Exactly.
After the strike of 94, a lot of fans turned away from the game of baseball, and the steroid era, you say what you want about it, is what brought a lot of fans back to baseball. Then, after it came out, a lot of fans left baseball again. And it's been, a tragic just a drastic decline of fans with spikes here and there when these scandals kind of pop up. The thing I don't like about this going forward is that the writers have basically just made this a hall of like who we like the best, and it's just kind of become a kind of a popularity contest in a sense, to where not even guys tied to steroids like a Curt Schilling aren't getting in, because of their political beliefs. Obviously, Curt Schilling can have whatever political belief that he wants, but that's essentially, taken out his resume from the Hall of Fame. And I believe that Curt Schilling is a Hall of Fame pitcher. So I think that there's a lot of things that come into play with that too.
No, 100%. And I've kind of noticed that as well. I think it was like 2017 or 2018 where they didn't vote anybody in.
Yeah, it was, I believe it was 2021. They didn't vote anyone in.
Oh, it was 2021. But, you could have voted Barry Bonds in. You could have voted Roger Clemens in. You chose not to. And it's literally just off of your personal feelings, because Barry Bonds, he was kind of a dick to the media. Sorry to swear, but he was. And
yeah, he was.
It kind of happens, but I don't feel like outside things should taint what the player did for the game of baseball. And like you said before, MLB was in a terrible place before steroids happened. And once you had McGwire and Sosa with their home run race, and then you had Barry Bonds, they practically saved baseball from tanking. And they were kind of the reason why baseball is what it is right now, because players that grew up watching them are in the MLB right now. So they've seen them, they've seen how fun baseball can be, and they've adapted that to the game that we see today. So I really feel like it doesn't matter what steroids that happened, I still think Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame. So.
What about Alex Rodriguez?
If you're asking the Red Sox fan in me, no. But
okay, but what draws the line there then? What's the difference?
Well, I mean, as a Red Sox fan, and there's a reason why. But I mean, granted, A-Rod probably could be in the Hall of Fame too. He was just as dominant when he played, and it's going to be another one of those things where if the media likes A-Rod enough to put him in there, and who knows, maybe A-Rod makes it, and then you get Barry Bonds in there. So I guess it just depends on.
That is something interesting I've seen, though, is that since A-Rod has retired from baseball, he's kind of changed up his persona a little bit. He went from being, really kind of a villain in the media to like this really polished up, baseball analyst guy. Like that's kind of become his whole persona now. So I do wonder how that's going to affect him moving forward. I wonder if, he's able to, kind of kiss enough ass to get into the Hall of Fame.
Exactly. And like you said, if it is a hall of, just people we like. And if A-Rod makes it, who knows? Maybe that opens the door to Bonds and Clemens and all the other guys.
If freaking A-Rod makes it, that has to open the door. I'm sorry.
It has to.
And because not only did A-Rod use steroids like a lot of these other alleged guys did, like a lot of these other alleged people did, there was lies, there was the whole biogenesis scandal, there was Tony Bosch, like there were so many things that were going on with A-Rod that it was a lot worse than just taking a needle and injecting yourself with stuff. Like there was lies and corruption and like ridiculous stuff that went on with A-Rod. So in my opinion, if A-Rod goes in, that's the tipping point. It's not David Ortiz, it's A-Rod.
Yeah, because I mean, granted, A-Rod has the stats to get in. He is a champion, although just like Bonds, he wasn't amazing in the playoffs, but A-Rod has the resume baseball wise to make it in. It's just, is that going to taint his resume? And who knows, maybe because of A-Rod's more polished image nowadays, maybe that just opens up the door for him to make it. And, it's just going to have to be one of those things where it's just going to be a wait and see type thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, the Hall of Fame, and until they add Pete Rose, they don't have that credibility from me. So
don't even get me started on Pete Rose.
Yeah, I mean, that's a completely that's a conversation that I feel like could last a whole nother episode. So I'm gonna have to wrap this one up here, and because that would go on way too long. So Ian, I thank you for coming on the episode again. Unfortunately, we are now down to the wire, which means that we're gonna go over everything we talked about in this episode and send you guys on your way. First things first, we welcomed in the Celtics guru, TikTok creator. I don't even know what to call you at this point, man. What should I call you?
I don't know, man. I mean, I don't even know what I call me. We'll just say I make content on the Celtics. We'll say that.
Yeah. Let's say that. But Ian Inangelo, everyone. Ian, is there anything you want to shout out personally with yourself before we go into this?
Yeah, you guys can follow me on my personal accounts. Ian Inangelo. IINANGELO. That's kind of my accounts, and that's kind of where I make most of my content. I also have a podcast, Celtics Talk Weekly, over on the BSML Celtics YouTube channel. So you guys can check that out as well if you want.
Absolutely. So, on the show today, we talked about Kevin Durant possibly going to the Boston Celtics. Some, rumors going on there. We talked about Juan Soto, in his status with the Washington Nationals, as well as Xander Bogaerts in the Boston Red Sox. And finally, we wrapped up things today by talking about David Ortiz getting inducted into the Hall of Fame and what that means for a lot of other guys that, potentially, could have their names enshrined in Cooperstown very soon. It was a great episode. And if you guys want to listen to this podcast, you can follow us on, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those platforms, as well as YouTube. And you can find all those links in our Instagram bio at down.to-the-wire. Again, at down.to-the-wire on the IG. We thank you guys so much for tuning in, listening once again. And from Down to the Wire, I'm Brian Costa.
I'm Ian Inangelo.
And we hope you guys have a great day. Take care and peace.